I think we've all been clear that this is tough and that there's a deep history of mistrust here. I think our goal hasn't changed, right? We are squarely focused on negotiating a long-term comprehensive solution to this issue. So we're only asking for a pause of a short period of time here. So we have an obligation right now to test this cautiously encouraging tone that we hear out of the new Iranian government. When we ask for a short pause on additional sanctions, we are not at this point rolling back any existing sanctions. You know, sanctions were never intended to be an end in and of themselves, right? They were intended to be a means to an end to increase the chances that we could get a diplomatic solution to this problem.
The P5+1 is engaged in serious and substantive negotiations with Iran that offer the possibility of a verifiable diplomatic agreement that will prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Those talks are continuing today in Geneva, where the United States is represented by Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, Wendy Sherman. We are not going to comment on the specifics of our negotiating positions. In general, the P5+1 is focused on developing a phased approach that in the first steps halts Iran's nuclear program from moving forward and potentially rolls back parts of it. The first step would address Iran's most advanced nuclear activities, increase transparency so Iran will not be able to use the cover of talks to advance its program, and create time and space as we negotiate a comprehensive agreement. This would stop Iran's nuclear program from advancing for the first time in a decade. In exchange for concrete, verifiable measures to address the P5+1's concerns during the first step, the P5+1 would consider limited, targeted, and reversible relief that does not affect our core sanctions architecture. That core sanctions architecture would be maintained until there is a final, comprehensive, verifiable agreement that resolves the international community's concerns. If Iran does not live up to its commitments, the temporary, modest relief would be terminated, and we would be in a position to ratchet up the pressure even further by adding new sanctions. And finally, any agreement between the international community and Iran will have to prove to the international community that Iran's program will be used for exclusively peaceful purposes in a meaningful and verifiable way. Iran must also meet its international obligations and fulfill its responsibilities under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, its responsibilities to the IAEA, and its responsibilities to stay in compliance with UN Security Council resolutions. The P5+1 remains united in this approach. There is no question that the very extensive sanctions regime that has been put in place, the sanctions architecture that has been put in place, led by the United States, has had a dramatic impact on the Iranian economy, and the Iranian leadership is very interested in getting out from under those sanctions and trying to reverse some of the negative consequences to their economy. We have always said that we're interested in making sure Iran does not and cannot acquire a nuclear weapon through diplomatic means. One, because a diplomatic resolution to this challenge is obviously preferable, and it's preferable in part because it would be the most certain and verifiable way to make sure that Iran never acquires a nuclear weapon. But there is a limited window of opportunity here, so we're taking advantage of a new level of seriousness that we've seen to engage in negotiations, but we are doing it in a way that makes clear that actions are what matter here, that steps that the P5+1 would insist upon in return for the moderate relief that I described would have to be verifiable, and they would be reversible. And if a comprehensive agreement were not reached, that relief would be terminated, and there would be the opportunity to ratchet up sanctions further.
Some members